In this video, I'm going to introduce to you component 2 of the eduqas GCSE Latin, which is on themes and sources. The topic for component 2 for you is superstitions and magic, and we're going to talk a bit about what you have to study, how you study it, what sort of resources are available, and the sort of questions that might come up as well. So, superstitions and magic. Here is the specification, and this is component 2 out of 3. So this is one of your 3 papers that you sit. All the papers are written, and in this written examination, you have 1 hour and 15 minutes to complete 60 marks worth of questions, and it's worth 30% of your qualifications. In this component, you need to demonstrate knowledge of the text and the picture material. Quite important because a lot of us forget that picture material needs to be part of your revision and part of your part of your answer to the longest question in this paper as well. In this paper, you will select, analyze, and respond to aspects of literary style. So throughout this piece of work, we'll be looking for how the author makes this passage more effective or more interesting. Show awareness of cultural and social context. We're studying the Romans, so we're going to see how the Romans deal with superstitions and magic, what they believe in, what sort of stories do they have about this, and how that affects their lives. And the final bullet point there, select and evaluate evidence from excuse me there. Select and evaluate evidence from throughout the theme to respond to an extended evaluative question. The last question brings all the things that you've studied, all the sources, all the text together for you to consider the Roman view or the Roman practice, beliefs, how the Romans deal with superstition and magic, right? Just like component 3, component 2 is an open book examination. So when you go into the exam, you will have a copy of the whole text. Sorry, when I say the whole text, that means every text and every source that we've studied, and in the back there will be a dictionary as well. So an open book. We'll talk a bit more about this in a moment. It doesn't mean that you don't have to learn them beforehand, far from it. But at least if you just forget 1 or 2 things, you can look them up during the exam. Right, these are the authors and sources that is part of the Superstitions and Magic collection of text and sources. There are seven authors, and there are 6 pictures. You see I've divided it up in this way because I think this order makes sense. In actual fact, all the example it gives you is the 7 texts and the pictures. Technically, you can study it any order you want, but I think this is the best order to do it. So we're going to start from sources 1, and then we're going to go on to Petronius, Ovid, Virgil. We might give it a break from that point and go back to some language study before we look at sources, or second set of sources, and then Pliny, Martial, Suetonius, and Horace. These are all original sources. What I mean is that the pictures that you see are pictures of things that the Romans themselves have made, and the texts are the same texts, perhaps ever so lightly edited, but generally they're the same words that the Roman authors have written over 2,000 years ago. We'll talk more about each author and we'll talk more about each source as we study them. But these are all great authors that I've, over the years, come to love and enjoy reading. And also the pictures, these are places and objects that I've enjoyed studying over time, and I hope you will as well. Okay, these bullet points are generally helpful. It gives you an idea of what you will study in the topic of superstitions and magic, but I find that a lot of them overlap. And when you look at the text and the sources, there isn't necessarily a clear cut between which of the bullet points you're looking at any given time. If you're wondering what divination means, it basically means telling the future. All right? Okay, so what this component aims to do is to provide practice for you to read more Latin, understand the meaning of the Latin, not just in the sense of how to translate it, but also, like every text that you read, what effects it has on you, or what's the author's intending effect in writing those words, or writing in a certain way. That partly ties on to the second bullet point, literary appreciation. And it also allows you to develop an understanding of the topic. I really love studying Latin as a language, and to be honest, I love translation and changing things from one language to another. But we all write and communicate and read because we want to get certain things across. We want to understand certain things. So I think the last bullet point is really important because it actually allows us to connect with the Romans, specifically over this topic of superstitions and magic. Right, some common concerns then. Let me try and preempt some of the questions that you've got about this topic. For the full answers to these questions or concerns, you can see the full video, but all I'll just say briefly is this. These are set texts, which means we study them together. We learn them together before you have to go into an exam to face them. We learn them, you revise them, and over time we get better at instantly recognizing what the text says. It shouldn't matter as much that there are grammar that you haven't learned to translate yet, because we will go through the translation together, and through learning and revising, you'd know the text well enough that even if some of the Latin is harder than what you would see in the language papers, through knowledge, you will be able to tackle these passages and be able to understand them and make critical comments about them. You're going to be guided through your learning. I'm sure I'll be here, whether we're distance learning or in the classroom. So even if some passages are hard to translate, and even though it looks like it's a lot, we'll break them into bite-sized chunks and we'll go through them and make sure we know them very well. And in no time, you get through the whole collection. The same goes with the style questions. You develop that experience over time and you get to know the techniques that different authors use in order to make the passage more effective. The key thing to understand is this. This course will be planned, broken down, and you will be guided through it by an experienced teacher. So it might look like there's a lot to worry about when you look at it from the outside, but once you get started and you get into it, I'm sure in no time you will have gone through it once and then you revise it more and then you'll be fine, ready for the exam when it comes. Of course, I do think it'll be really annoying if every conversation you have with your friends you just start getting, that's a style point. Yeah, so don't do that. Right, I think I've addressed some common concerns. If you have more, the next slide should help you with that. If you have more concerns, ask your teacher. Resources available. Look, even if you're remote learning this, even if you're not in the room as you're watching this PowerPoint presentation, I'm only an email away, or if you use Teams or some sort of online platform, I'm only an online platform away. If you can't find the answer in your resources, if you can't find the answer in the videos that you've been watching about this course, then just ask. You don't have to ask me in the first instance. You can ask others first, and that's why having a notice board like Teams is quite useful. Okay, but the main resource available, most of the things that we study and more are going to be on the Cambridge Schools Classics Project website, which I'm going to show you in a moment. It's got a dedicated area for the course that we study with resources such as students' booklets, just a copy of the sources, and an interactive text explorer as well. I know some teachers might be reluctant in showing this to you because in some sense, some of the resources might provide answers to the work that you do. But I'm going to trust you here because I think for you to be an independent learner, you need to know where to find things that would help you with your study. So I'm going to show you what is available on the Cambridge Schools Classics project. Okay, here's the browser that I've chosen to use. What a lovely lighthouse. I wonder if it says where it is. It's Cape Elizabeth in Maine, so if you ever go to New England, you can visit that place. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Cambridge Schools Classics project. Now you can see I've already got like a fast link on here, so you should definitely make sure it's one of your favorites on your browser, whether you use Edge or whether you use Chrome or Firefox or anything like that. Just a quick tip: if ever you find that something's not working on one, like you can't access it, try and use another browser first to see if it has the same problems. Right, so what I'm going to do now on the search bar is to type Cambridge. I'm just going to ignore the fact that there's an automatic suggestion because it might not on yours when you first access it. So if I type Cambridge Schools Classics Project, we wait and wait for the spinning disk to load. It tells you where they're based. They have a lovely office, but this is the website. If you click on it, and then you pray to the god of internet to hope that it loads quickly. Here you have the Cambridge Schools Classics Project website, and if you want to access anything from the Cambridge Latin course, this is the button you click. So vocab tester, activities to help you practice the different endings, that sort of thing. But we need GCSE Latin support. Now, option for eduqas, option for OCR. We're studying the eduqas option, so this is the button. It's loaded, and there are actually resources for all three components that you do. For now, we focus on component 2. You can click on it on here as well, on this side, and you can see that there are different options. We could have chosen to do travel by land and sea, and Mr. Lee loves traveling, so I did agonize over that, but in the end, superstition and magic is what we're going to choose. Again, you have two options. Whichever one you click on should get you onto the same page. Now, superstitions and magic. There are different options here of what sort of things you can do. Right, just to give you a quick overview of what's available on this page. This is the text, and this is the vocabulary list. So the text contains all the texts that you will be studying, and the vocab list contains all the words within the text that you'll be studying. The prescribed text also include the pictures, I should say. This is basically the version that you get in the exam. So if you just want to download the Latin, then this is the area for you. There's also a link to the exam board page on our course as well. Below, you've got the interactive text explorer, which is where you can click on each individual words to see what the definition and what the grammatical explanations are. You've got a student study book. You may have seen these already. It's got a very small section of text with the glossary for all the words that appear in that text on there, and also some space for you to write your translation down. The bit where it says complete notes and commentary, this is the full document, and these are the ones, these are basically the sections broken down. So if you want to open the whole document, click on this. If you want to open just the section that you want on an individual author, you click on one of these. They're in quite a lot of detail, so you don't really need to access them unless you want to further your learning. I will make sure that the relevant information from the notes are available to you, either by saying it to you or by making sure it's on any handouts or anything that I've given to you. There's also the translation. Quite a lot of activities will require you to work out what a translation is. So I don't really want you to be accessing the translation straight away, because it takes away that learning opportunity. I know I can trust you on this, which is why I'm going to tell you that it's here. You might find there's some use to it when you're revising. But in the first instance, I wouldn't click on this or go near it, just because if you make sure you're learning an opportunity, if you make sure the first time you meet these texts are as effective as possible, which pretty much means following the instructions I've given you, then you need to make sure that you don't click on the translation button to access that document. In most cases, maybe I'll change my mind later, but I'll let you know. So these are all the things that are available on this page for Component 2, Superstition and Magic.
I really do think that this is a great component, allowing you to understand the original Latin text and to consider one aspect of the Roman civilization, so that you're not just translating, but you're really understanding what the text is about, which is what studying Latin and studying about the Romans should be about, right? Remember that if you have any questions, or if there's anything that interests you or you want to find out more about, the best resource, or at least the best person to direct you, is your teacher. So do make sure you ask, and we can direct you in the right place. I hope this video clears up a few things, or answers a few of your questions about this component, and I hope you really enjoy this component of superstitions and magic. Enjoy!